Hello, and thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast. Appreciate you guys tuning in for the first week of August 2020. I'm out on a camping trip right now. I'm deep in the middle of the Fremont National Forest, where I've been driving around for a good part of the day. And it's not really high desert out here. I think it's still mostly like smaller pine trees. And then I think just a little bit further east, if I were to drive, is where you would start to drop into the area that would be like the Great Basin. I think that area that was the inland sea back during the Pleistocene period before the end of the last ice age. And that's where you get like out into eastern Oregon and then out into Nevada too. I think it's like just a little east of Bend, Oregon, and then south from there into Nevada and parts of Utah. I think it's like a real big, like high desert area that I think was mostly created from like an inland sea, or that's I think what they talk about, the Great Basin area when you look on those maps, and it kind of has those far northern regions that are up into the Ochoco Mountains. I'm pretty sure, or somewhere around there. But I think it's pretty cool being out here. I was able to find an old, or at least it's on the map, as like a Forest Service cabin. I don't think it was really in use by the Forest Service. It's not like a base, or it's not like a place where they have resources or trucks. It's just like an old built homestead almost is what it looks like out here. And it's got, but I think it's kind of semi-managed and sort of protected by the National Forest Service out here. The road's pretty good to get into it. And then it opens up into a big meadow that's probably, 6 or 7 acres or so, and then there's like a big fencing around it made out of the small log pines that they dropped, and then they'd put together these A-frames and then stack together logs on that to make these big fences that kind of stretch around the property of the house, I guess, to not have it, trampled or whatever by whatever's out here. I think when I was walking around, I saw that there seems to be like some open range cattle that shares the land out here. As I was walking around, I could see some sign of it, and then I could also see, and this is where I'm not really too good at following like what I'm seeing. I'm not sure if it's like mule deer that are out here, or if it's elk that are out here. I know the mule deer are out here, but I'm not sure if what I was seeing was from an elk or not. It seemed like it would be elk, but I'm not really sure. It's kind of cool though. It's cool being out here in this area. I've spent a good part of the day getting down here. I've been trying to do a camping trip of some sort each week here through the summer, and that's really kind of been really only one of the few things that have been stress relieving. Anybody else stressed this year? 2020, man, what a good time. It's been a long couple months, it seems like, and it seems like a lot of changes and a lot of shifts and stuff for a lot of people, myself included, and just kind of the way that things go, and the way that you're able to kind of plan for the future, and the way you're able to sort of deal and figure stuff out. And yeah, it's been kind of depressing too, just sort of the change up, and really I think psychologically the more draining thing is the lack of assurance that it's sorting out, or that any of these milestones that are out here for what we're dealing with are stable milestones. It seems like they kind of keep moving out further and further away from us. I remember back in early, mid-March, March 15th, when we had the guidelines for America come out, said we were going to be locked down for 2 weeks, a 15-day period. We were going to get a stimulus check, and then it could last with an effect as long into July or August. I remember hearing in that part. Now we're here in August. Seems like it's still on us. Seems like it's like one of the longest periods that, of course, it's obvious what I'm saying now, but it's just the longest period in history that I think anything like this has ever occurred in this kind of pattern. I mean, we've had other pandemics and stuff, but I think more what I'm talking about is like the social pressure that's sort of coming along with this set of circumstances that we've seen over the last few months. Maybe it's part of an election year. A lot of countries go through periods of turmoil before their election cycle process, but as it is, I think it's just like a lot of real factors that are uncomfortable. So part of what I've been trying to do, since I have a pretty small, or how do I say? Yeah, it's like a pretty easy set of things that I'm up to right now. And I'd really like to expand it. I've been kind of frustrated that there's not really an opportunity to do a lot more stuff. You know, like any of the weddings I would have done this summer, they're pretty much out. Any of the other work stuff I would have done to make some money is sort of up in the air. And so a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is sort of alternative to that, which has been really interesting, or, you know, it's been fine. It's not been that interesting, I guess, given just the amount of pressure that's on everything. If it was just an open period, you know, where everybody got to kind of relearn some things and we knew when it was going to end, or we knew that it was a good thing that was happening, you know, I bet everybody would have been more creative. That's sort of what I'd heard from a lot of folks, or, you know, like I listen to a lot of radio and a lot of podcasts and stuff. I listen to a lot of podcasts from the different comics that are out there, along with a few others, but at the beginning of all this, they were talking about, oh yeah, we're gonna write a ton. We're gonna come out of this with a whole new hour of material of jokes to write. And then a couple weeks into it, they're all saying, I haven't even flipped open a notebook. I haven't written anything down. I haven't done anything creative. And I think that's sort of a sign I've been hearing from a lot of people that are out to try and do something semi-creative, or even just creatively wake up and make coffee and eggs. It's like it's just a drag a lot of the time, and there's a lot of stuff that's kind of dragging people down in a number of ways. So I hope everybody that does end up listening to this is getting through it and understands that they're not alone in all the stuff that's going on. And it's I don't know, it's a unique year in a lot of ways. So man, I hope it's unique. It's unique so far into my life. So I guess I can count my blessings on that. So I'm out here, and what I've been trying to do to kind of sort out that stress and stuff is to try and get out and get to do some more outdoor travel and some camping stuff while I have the wide opportunity to, especially through the summer. I mean, that's one of the activities that's not restricted is traveling around and camping. I think I talked about that on one of those podcasts in May when we were still in the lockdown, coming up to our phase 1 reopening, and we're all kind of trying to figure out what can we do, what can we not do, what do we do with this time now that we have, you know, we can't go to work. You know, we kind of do some stuff in town, but it's like you can only like take walks around your block so many times, or take hikes at the park so many times. So I don't know, I guess since I have the background in it and since I've been doing it for a while, I've been trying to take advantage of getting out once a week for an overnight trip or a 2-night trip. To go to some new places in Oregon, and really trying to do a lot of scouting stuff, which I've enjoyed too. Doing some scouting stuff through the summertime has been pretty cool, where I'm really trying to go through some of these back roads. I'm trying to mark spots on the map where there's good campsites, which I hadn't really done before. You know, there's a lot of places I've driven, a lot of roads I've been on, and especially, you know, like backcountry roads, too, Forest Service roads, BLM roads. And I know a lot of good dispersed camping areas. And really, I understand the context of how to find those areas so much better now that I'm older than when I was young. I mean, when I was young and I'd go camping with my dad, you know, we'd go out to Eastern Oregon, we'd find some spots, and they had known about those spots since, you know, he was a kid, and he was going over there and hunting camps and stuff with his grandpa. So it's cool for me to get to go over to those same spots and get to check out that area and stuff. But I think there's been, or at least when I was a kid, I didn't really understand the land, like the public land rights that you have, and really how those are organized, like how public lands are organized and what you can do on them, and sort of how it operates. I didn't really understand the difference between national forest land and BLM land, or national park land and state park land, or wilderness areas, national wildlife refuge areas. Man, there's just so many different distinctions of different things. And then also just private property. So I didn't really have a clear recollection of any of those things. And really a lot of time when it's public land, you can go on it, but there's some things you can't do on it, like either maybe hunt in some circumstances, like a national park, or I think you can't discharge a firearm inside a national park. But for specifically permitted events, maybe probably national wildlife refuges, I think those hunting opportunities are limited also. Though you can still do some things in those areas. I think you have to get permitted, and you have to draw a tag for that location, I think is what it is. But yeah, it's kind of interesting sort of learning about that, learning how these things go, and also finally getting some maps that you can use that you can kind of trust better while you're in the backcountry. I think that's something that's really helped me kind of understand where I can go and what I can do. And I've had those map books, you know, like that 50-page or 100-page book of Oregon, and, you know, every page is a 25-mile map. of that area. It was always super useful how they kind of grid out everything and show you the mile by mile marking and the topography of the area, the different little roads and stuff. But even those roads, those map makers still got things wrong. I remember too, back in was it 2004? I think we were out in an area in southern Oregon near the Nevada border. What was it, Drew's Reservoir? Somewhere south of Gearhart Mountain. And I remember we were on some little road. I don't even know if it was a national forest area. I think it was just is in between private and public lands as it kind of jumps back and forth in those pretty remote areas. All of it is just remote desert and forest and sagebrush and juniper, but some of it goes into like ranch land that's more managed, and some of it cuts back into BLM land as those little roads sort of meander through it. But I remember being out there and noticing that the map on the page was just totally different than the map, or than the real world ground truth of where the road went. And I thought, oh whoa, yeah, you can't really trust the maps to show you the information that you want to see when you need it. Other times too, you'll see like, hey, like it shows there's a road right here. Good deal. We'll take that road. Well, it shows it. It's on the map. So you cut down there, you get on the road, and then it's washed out like crazy, or it's super bumpy and and just a terrible ride. But it's the same green roads, the same label, the same marking as the road next to it that was graded and I don't know what. It's not paved, right? It's graded gravel. They put more gravel down, I think is what I'm trying to say. They've made it an easier going road to drive on. But then you get those washboard sections out there. I don't know if you guys have been on that, where you're driving around in the Forest Service roads and those gravel roads. And I think it's a natural process of erosion that occurs that creates these waves in the material. As the rainwater comes down, it sort of naturally over time generates these little ripples. And that's the washboard effect that you get when you're driving. That's also the thing that kind of kicks your car sideways when you're going a little too fast on a gravel road. That's what I started doing today. I think I kicked it pretty hard side, or it was pretty loose on the traction, and it was starting to tip sideways in my truck. And so I slowed down and threw it into 4-wheel drive after that, and was able to cruise around out here pretty freely. But yeah, I wanted to talk on this podcast about hanging out in the Fremont National Forest, and I just got finished with a huge thunderstorm that came through. It just really finished raining a little bit ago. It kind of, I think when I arrived here today at this meadow, it was still a few hours before sunset, so I walked around and kind of went along the perimeter of the meadow, and then I noticed that it's cloudy. It's been kind of cloudy today, and there's been thunderheads that have been building up over the location that I've been. Ever since I kind of came over the pass of the Cascades, I've been in like a pretty solid string of thunderheads that have sort of coalesced into a big mass over the Cascades. Some of it here over the Fremont National Forest, whatever mountains these are that I'm in. And yeah, it seems like this section of Eastern Oregon was getting hit with a good summer August thunderstorm today, which was kind of fun to sit through and go through. It was cool. I got rained on pretty hard earlier when I was driving over, and I thought I'd get out here and be a little bit more free of it, but it seemed like that storm kind of drifted over this way and then was sort of drifting north from here. And yeah, it was a new system, but man, there was just a bunch of lightning that was coming through and huge cracks of thunder, just big, deep rumbles. I haven't heard thunder like that in years and years, probably, where it just kind of stays and like hangs and rolls for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, it seems like, where you just really kind of like, whoa, can it really still be just cracking and rumbling and rolling? And there was enough lightning activity that was going on there where you'd hear thunder. I mean, it was almost like 45 minutes there where there was just a crack and a roll of thunder almost continuously. Like it was pretty intense. It's really, I think, one of the more strong lightning storms I've been in a while. But that's sort of how it goes out here when you're at these higher elevations. I think I'm floating around up in the 5,100 feet or so above sea level. And so it just means I'm up in the mountains where these thunderstorms get started. They get there. I think that's where they all kind of coalesce over these big mountaintops and then float over in the hot weather. I don't really understand the weather enough to say I know how a thunderstorm starts or doesn't start. Now I've just gotten cold enough. I'm trying to throw a jacket on. I know. You got to live through it. I'm really camping. It's been good. But I'm going to be out here for 2 nights, I think is what I'm going to do. And then tomorrow I'll cruise out and I'll try and hit some of these Forest Service roads for a bit, drive around, do some exploring, mark a couple spots on the map as I'm cruising around. I think that'll be a good time. But yeah, I haven't been out here before. I think I've heard of a couple friends that have been out in this area that have done some. I think they did a couple scouting trips for a hunting trip that they were going on in the fall. I think this is an area where one of my friends goes. I think they try and draw a tag for not this area. I think it's a drainage over from here. But I think I've heard about this area a couple times from people talking about it. So yeah, it's cool. It's a cool spot. I was out taking pictures earlier, taking some photographs. I've been working mostly, probably for almost a year and a half now. I've been working a lot with this 17 to 40 millimeter wide angle Canon lens, and it's a pretty inexpensive lens. You can get it for like $400, maybe a little less if you're lucky, and you get it on a sale time. Sometimes in the fall, as we're kind of ramping down toward Thanksgiving, I think you can get some good deals on it. But it's sort of in the $400 range. I think sometimes maybe it's more around $500 or something. But I picked it up a couple years ago when I was starting to do some real estate photography. I was working for Airbnb for a while, where they had hired me as a photographer to go into these Airbnb Plus listings and get a new set of photographs. That was interesting, kind of learning about how specific they wanted all of those photographs in this really specific art style and format of it. And that was fine. It was interesting to do for a while. But what was cool is I picked up that lens to get in and do that work. But really after that, I've been appreciating how much I can do with that wide angle lens. And then 40 millimeters isn't way different than 50 millimeters. It's certainly different for the effects of portraits and stuff. But when I'm out here doing landscape stuff and I'm trying to take pictures of a lot of this stuff is kind of sketch photos too, where I'm sort of going around at midday. I'm taking some photos of some different things. I want some camp photos of my truck and my little cooler set up in the back here. So all that's been good. In addition to that, the astrophotography stuff that I can do with it is pretty cool because it drops down to the 17 millimeters. It's an autofocus lens. It's a sealed lens. It's pretty good in most ways. And I've really noticed over time that I'm not as absolute of a mandate for me to be shooting at a really wide open f-stop. If I'm shooting at a wide open aperture, almost all my photos early on were at 1.8 or 2.0 or 2.8 or something. And I would do that really because I was really trying to get, because I didn't have very many lenses, I was really trying to get as much effect out of that bokeh, out of that soft background as I could. So I was really trying to lean into that and get some photos with it. And I noticed with my camera and equipment at the time that it just looked better. It just did look better when it was at f1.8. I think I just had that nifty 50 Nikon 50 millimeter for the longest time. That's what I did my early trips on, and did a lot of my portfolio building stuff on that. But I've got a different 50 millimeter lens with me now. I've got it on my film camera in my bag right now, which I need to take out too. And I'm trying to finish a roll of Ektar film. It's been on there for a while. And I've enjoyed shooting it. It's cool. It's a new Canon camera to me, at least. I got it used on KEH and spent $35 on it, $10 to ship it, and it takes a weird battery too. It's one of those '90s film cameras, and it has this weird. It almost looks like a battery pack. It's almost like two double A's if they were a little fatter that are bonded together in this little plastic pack, and then you pop that in there and shoot for a little while, I guess, and it runs a meter okay. So I'm getting by with it. But I've noticed with the film camera stuff, it's fun to have an awesome film camera. It'd be cool to have a Leica and all the lenses I wanted, but a lot of the time with that, I have the good lenses. I have this newer like Canon L glass that I get to shoot through, and for film photos and for the variety of image or the variety of lenses I have, I can do telephoto, I can do prime, I can do really wide angle, all with modern digital Canon lenses that have chips in them that read well, that meter well, that make contact with or that send information back and forth, or at least from the lens to the camera. I think is that how it works. That works in the autofocus stuff for the digital camera. This is autofocus. So yeah, it's an autofocus digital camera. It's sending information back. It's working. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so it's cool. Like that's something I didn't really have available to me for a long time. You know, I think when I've probably on this podcast, if you go way back in the archives, I'm talking a lot about film with a Nikon F4. You know, I mean that just had autofocus. That was the first camera in like '88 to get autofocus. Period. So it's cool to have that in a more flexible way now. But what I remember talking about in the past a lot was that I had like limited options with glass a lot of the time. I didn't really always have the lenses that I would have preferred. And so I've kind of made a collection of that now with this Canon stuff. I've got a Canon camera, and so I can throw all those lenses on and have that same flexibility that I have with my digital set, but just with this film body that I get to shoot a roll through. So I kind of save the film stuff for when it's a thing that I want. But what I've noticed, though, for a little while is that I miss a lot of those moments, and I end up just having the norm, you know, the regular digital camera with me with a bunch of my other gear. When I've been going out, I've been trying to kind of just take the camera with me, and then I'll leave the bigger bag back at the truck so that I'm not really carrying as much stuff with me. I've also started carrying, like when I'm out here in the woods and stuff, I'm carrying a binocular harness with me, which is kind of cool. You can get them in different sizes, but it's sort of like if you imagine like a backpack, but what they do is they strap onto the front, so it's right on your chest. And what you can do is put like a pair of binoculars in there, so you can pull them out and then scout around with your binoculars, do some glassing, and then pop them back into your harness, and then kind of carry on with whatever you want to do. But if you leave that empty without the binoculars, if you have a smaller camera rig, probably like a mirrorless or a Sony camera, you know, like one of those Sony A6000s, man, if you were a backpacker and you had a Sony A6000 and this front carry like binocular pack, you'd be really sad. That would be like all the camera bag that you'd need. In fact, really, if I'm thinking about ever doing some some longer backpacking travel where I just have to pack everything in and weight's going to be something I'm more conscious of, then I think that's really like the way to go. As I've kind of been thinking about it a little bit, is like get a lighter camera. Or, I mean, it'd be great to like carry like a 360 camera, you know, if you're going up somewhere. Those are almost nothing as it is anyway. But if you're carrying like an SLR or something that you want to try and do some more controlled photography with, and you had something like an A6000 from Sony or an A7 7R3 or whatever it is, something that size with a lens attached to it, you know, that could fit in one of these binocular harnesses and carry kind of right on your front. And then, you see something, you want to take it, pop that open right on your chest, pull it right up to your eye. It's got straps on it in the harness. Pull it right up to your eye. It's ready to shoot, and you can take photos of it, or take photos, you know, as quick as you want to. So it's kind of a cool process if you're out hiking a lot. For what I'm doing, I have my binocular harness, but it's got binoculars in it. And I've been kind of going around. I've been trying to do some bird watching stuff while I'm out here, and I saw a cool hawk that was posted up who was looking at me. That's about all I've seen so far. I saw a coyote the other day. That was cool. I'll talk about that later, though. But so I have those binoculars in there, and I've been kind of going out on these shorter hikes and stuff. But I've been trying to go around and like just kind of watch some stuff or watch the land and kind of keep an eye out. But I just have the camera on my longer strap on my side with that 17 to 40 millimeter lens, and that's worked really good. And it's been a pretty flexible kit for me to go around and take a bunch of photographs with. So it's pretty easy, pretty lightweight to work with, and I can kind of move back and forth between those things strapped around my neck. You know, it's not everything just hanging around my neck with a lanyard. It's all kind of put somewhere or packed in somewhere. So that's been kind of cool. But it was good going out and taking some photos tonight. I was trying to get some of the. I didn't get any lightning in the camera though. The lightning storm kind of passed as soon as it was getting really dark enough to do like a long exposure kind of thing where I could sort of catch something sparking. Otherwise, you know, you gotta beat the lightning bolt with your shutter finger, and that's a pretty tricky task to do. I think that's how they do it. You know, when you get those like magazine photos back in the day of a powerful lightning bolt striking, I don't know, in the center of a road or something like that. That's what they'd show you, know, some kind of power or lightning bolt. But the way that they would do that stuff is I think it was like I think it was dark out, you know, or pretty dark out. And so they'd set the camera up for just a cycle of long exposures, and then they would just kind of let it ride, you know. So they'd have a couple seconds to expose the image to whatever, you know, would work. And then they would just kind of have that rolling so that when a bolt of lightning did strike, and it would be captured. And you could go through that collection of captured, or, how do I say that? When a lightning bolt would strike the ground, the camera would have already been exposing for a photograph, because it's just cycling the shutter on a 4-second exposure, let's say, something like that. And so, it takes a 4-second exposure, stops, processes for a second, takes a 4-second exposure, stops, processes for a second. So I think that's how they did some of that stuff, where they kind of anticipate, all right, it's been a couple minutes, let's take a frame now, and then it's just going to be an event in the future, so we don't know if it's going to happen or not. We're going to wait for this event in the future when we, boom, see a lightning bolt, and then that light then exposes the sensor or the film in the camera, and then you're left with an image that has that lightning bolt represented in the frame when you're shooting on a tripod or something like that, with like a short cycle, long exposure. And I thought that was pretty cool, but I didn't really get a chance to get all that stuff set up before the storm kind of passed me by. I did get a lot of cool handheld stuff that's great, of the thunderheads and stuff. And really, unfortunately, just in the location that I'm at, a lot of and I guess maybe for the better, but that lightning storm didn't pass right over my head. It was still a little ways away, so I could see the lightning bolts cracking through the trees kind of out in the distance more. A few that stretched across the sky pretty good too. It was just, a big old, from east to west, it was like, a big old chunk of a bolt that just crack all the way across the sky. It was cool. So I got some photos of the thunderheads, the sunset, the big field out here. It's cool. It's a nice area. But I was also thinking about some of the other stuff that I want to be doing tomorrow. So I'm out in the Fremont National Forest. I'm going to be heading, I think, maybe south from here, and I'm going to try and explore a couple areas that are still open. I guess it's all open public land. This is like a pretty large contiguous section of national forest land here, and really, like, that's a big part of Oregon overall, right? It's like 53% public lands. It's cool, yeah. If you look at a map, you'll see the cities and you'll see like the highways and stuff. But if you have the right map, it'll show you where the BLM land is and where the different national forests are. And it's cool. This whole area of the Northwest is just, there's a lot of public land that you get to use, and there's a lot of open area that you get to go to. And yeah, now that I've got a good map of the outdoor off-road roads and some of the terrain and stuff with some good notes, and I'm able to kind of move around and get out to a lot more places than I had before. So it's been cool. The app that I'm using is the OnX Off-Road app. It's I think $29.99 a year, and so I picked up this app, and then you can download offline these really detailed off-road maps that are supposed to show you all the trails, even just walking trails, all the roads, all of the like the pieces of information you'd need for kind of moving around in the backcountry. And really, as surprising as it is, as remote as a lot of these places are, people go here. It's also public land that's managed by the Forest Department, Forest Service. Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff's managed by the Forest Service. The BLM stuff's managed by the BLM, but that's why these roads are as good as they are, or maintained, or that's why, like, when trees are downed on these mountain roads, someone has to go through at the beginning of the year and cut all those out, rip them out, fill in the potholes, all that sort of stuff. So all these areas are known about and kind of managed in a pretty significant way. In fact, I think more so to come in the future. I think they just have announced yesterday or the day before that they've passed the Great American Outdoors Act, which I really don't know the first thing about, or what it does or doesn't do, or what it puts in or leaves out. But I think part of my understanding is that it's supposed to change some of the funding mechanisms that go into supporting the maintenance of these public lands that are out here across the country, but really significantly out here in the western states. So it's pretty cool. I think before that it was like, well, we should spend X amount of money, but there's a more important place for that money to go. So it wasn't like a guaranteed amount. It's sort of what I understand. So if I understand it correctly, there's like, I think they've said $3 billion a year of mandated funding for projects, I think here in the backcountry. BLM land, Forest Service land, and like national wildlife refuges and stuff. So pretty cool. But yeah, I think that's maybe we'll see a change in that. I think it's supposed to better fund the operations of BLM and Forest Service people as they're going through and trying to get these areas ready for the public to be using more regularly. So it's cool. I think it'll mean a lot over the next few years, or maybe we'll see how it kind of transforms some of the way that these areas are managed. I think maybe it's more for, well, I probably shouldn't even speculate. I'm not sure at all. But it's pretty cool. I'm excited about being out here and doing some camping and stuff, dealing with this thunderstorm. I think it's one of those things where by the morning, it's going to be, or at least, I was looking at the weather. It should be mostly cloudy, or partly cloudy, mostly sunny tomorrow for a while. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm excited to be hanging out, doing some camping stuff, doing some podcasting. I'm in the back of my truck right now. Like I was saying, it was raining earlier after those thunderstorms, so I got that canopy on my truck, and I'm nice and dry, nice and warm. It kind of feels like I'm just inside somewhere. So it's a cool rig, having the 4-wheel drive, having the canopy on the back, having your stuff in your sleeping area just kind of set up back there, and I'm ready to go. So I've been having a good time being out here, and I don't know, it's been a pretty good trip so far. So I appreciate you guys checking out this podcast from me. I'm going to do a couple more podcasts while I'm out here on this camping trip, and I'll try and set up a little backlog of them on my website. I think that'll be a good idea. I know I kind of take big breaks and stuff from it. I'm sure no one keeps listening when it is there. But hey, if you listen to this end of the podcast, shoot me an email. Time for the plugs. It's BillyNewmanPhoto.com. If you want to check out my website, see some of my photographs, check out more podcasts that I've done, or books that I've tried to put together, which is maybe what I'm going to try and do out here too. I'm going to try and get some photographs for another good book. But BillyNewmanPhoto.com. You can check me out there. That's where all my focus is going these days. Write me an email. There's a forum there if you want to get in touch with me. And always good to hear from people, I suppose. So thanks a lot for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast. Appreciate you listening. Goodbye.